Thank you, Daryl. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Baskar Reddy from India. I look after agriculture and food processing in FICCI, Federation of Indian Chambers of Commerce and Industry, one of the largest apex chambers of commerce in India. When I was told that, I was told to make a presentation on the market potential of CSPO in India, it's really difficult to exactly quantify in terms of numbers, what is the market potential, but I thought I can provide you a perspective on what kind of market does India have for CSPO, and let me illustrate that by making this presentation. The presentation of the 5 pointers. One, obviously all of you know about India's dependence on palm oil. I'll just put some facts and figures together to further give you, to further reinforce how strong the Indian market is for palm oil. And then what are the government initiatives and how the government is looking at promoting palm oil in India, and also the issue of sustainability. I will explain some of the initiatives taken by the government on driving sustainability in India, and then sustainability initiatives specifically on palm oil by a couple of companies, and also some other sustainability issues in other crops. And what kind of new policy framework can be put in place to further drive the agenda of CSPO in India. And finally, is India ready for CSPO? A very a brief presentation here. If you look at the overall food supply situation in India, it's pretty much comfortable in terms of rice and wheat. Last year we had a record harvest of about 250 million tons of food grains, 102 million tons of rice, 90 million tons of wheat, so doing fairly well in terms of cereal crops. But the situation is very alarming in terms of edible oil. I mean, it's been a case for the last, I think, 10-12 years. It's getting further aggravated with the demand-supply gap widening further year on year. Indian edible oil imports are likely to touch 10 million tons this year. I mean, that's amazing number, 10 million tons of imports of total edible oils, including palm oil. The total consumption of edible oils in India is about 16.42 million tons, out of which 46% is palm oil. Palm oil it occupies a massive share in this. If you look at the oilseed sector in India, area under oilseeds is about 27 million hectares. The yields are very low. That's one of the major concerns. There's average yield of about 1100 kgs per hectare. The total output of 9 oilseeds is about 30 million tons, and cotton seed and other copra is about 11 million tons. Total, it's about 41 million tons of oilseed produce, of which we get about 8.12 million tons of vegetable oils. And the demand, as I mentioned earlier, is about 16.7, so that leads us to a very sharp, almost more than half of what's produced has to be imported. So last year, I think we imported about 9.4 million tons, and this year it's likely to touch about 10 million tons. Per capita consumption is about 13.5 kilograms. This is the situation on the import of edible oils. If you look at 2006, I think it was less than 5 million tons of imports. So from 5 million tons of 4.7 million tons in 2006, in about 6 years, we have already touched 9.610 million tons. So this consumption is, it's mainly driven by the change in the consumption habits, consumption patterns, more and more protein diet, more use of niche category of foods, which is driving up the consumption of edible oils. And also the fact that we have seen a very strong economy in the last 6-7 years with more disposable incomes. I think there is definitely a shift in the dietary patterns. And coming specifically to the palm oil situation in India, I think it has always remained the largest, the palm oil, the constituent of the edible oils that we import in India. But this year, I think we touched about 7.7 million tons of palm oil that has been imported, and the consumption is about 7.9, with some overlap from last year imports. And we consume about 17% of the world's palm oil produced, and we are the largest importer of palm oil with 44% of the world imports. So that makes us a a very strong market for India, being a very strong market, and obviously, somehow we need to find ways and means of driving the agenda of sustainability on palm oil, and that's, if we are able to do that in a successful manner, we capture a large market. I mean, government initiatives, government in India has been very proactive on driving the production of palm oil in India, because obviously they want to reduce the dependence on oil imports. And so they have launched a number of programs over the last few years called ISOPalm, it's called ISOPalm, which is a oil palm development program. And they also have, specifically last year they had a program of bringing about 60,000 hectares in about 8 states, again during using a different program called Oil Palm Area Expansion Program. And the overall vision is that over the next 1 to 2 decades, I mean, they're planning to bring about 1 million hectares of land by increasing the yield up to 3 to 4 tons, so that we get about 3 to 4 million tons of palm oil. So that's the larger vision that we have. And a small facts about the production is barely almost zero here, about 0.08. This is the concern I spoke earlier about. 1.12 is the productivity in India. I think we need to find some ways and means of improving the productivity in India. I think we'll again request, I don't know, although it's not a mandate of RSPO, but I think we'll be grateful to RSPO if you could work with the Indian companies in driving the productivity in India to some levels up. And sustainable practices in palm oil. Many companies are using oil palm biomass as manure, use of micro-irrigation for saving water, judicious use of fertilizers by actively doing the soil fertility tests on every farm, and recommending farmers to go in for judicious use of fertilizers. And interesting aspect is in some parts of Northeast India where shifting cultivation is practiced, especially in the paddy fields where they shift every 2 years, alternate years. They cut up, they use the shifting cultivation. The oil palm cultivation is reducing the shifting cultivation because it's a long-standing crop, so they don't need to shift to a new area. And on sustainability, apart from palm oil, I think India has been the, as I told, leader in the sustainable initiatives in agriculture, especially on the paddy side. I would just like to mention that the government has been promoting a new kind of paddy cultivation called SRI, System of Rice Intensification, which requires about 30% less amount of, or 30 to 40% less of water than the traditional growing of paddy. They're incentivizing and they're subsidizing use of laser land levelers for leveling the field so that they consume less water. We have brought about close to 3 million hectares of land under zero tillage with no till happening there. And drip irrigation is being incentivized, subsidized for farmers. So a lot of initiatives on the sustainability side. So the government is putting in a lot of efforts on the sustainability side. So I think given a right push, I mean the government might be willing to consider, finding ways and means of driving a CSPO agenda in India also. And looking at that's where I said some kind of a new framework has to be created. I was looking at, this is again open-ended questions for the audience actually. A group certification for farmers, market access, which was discussed in the morning. Is there a premium for farmers to go in for CSPO? Aligning food industry with CSPO, I think most of the multinationals present in India like Unilever, Walmart and Cargill, Pepsi and all of them have already, I think they're looking at aligning with the CSPO. Import duty concessions, which was mentioned by esteemed speaker in the morning, Mr. Chandran. I think that's very important thing. I think how can we convince the government to go in for some kind of import duty concessions for CSPO certified palm oil here, and the new policy framework. So rather than looking at issues in isolation, can we look at a larger, can we go to the government requesting for a new framework that will drive the CSPO agenda in India? That's the kind of work that we need to do. And coming to the last slide, is India ready for CSPO is the larger question. I would definitely say the answer is big yes, because India leads in sustainability in other crops. So obviously, sustainability in palm, I don't think the government would have any second thoughts on working on sustainability in palm. MNCs in India are already aligned, which I just briefly mentioned, Indian companies are also getting conscious, because most of the Indian companies today are going global. I mean, they're acquiring brands abroad, and they're really expanding their businesses. So they're becoming more and more conscious. So I think that the time is ripe for engaging them and bringing them on board for CSPO thing. Indian government, as I told, is pro-sustainable. It works on pro-sustainability issues, supports a lot of programs, subsidies for equipment buying for the farmers, and various kinds of programs that support farmers. So we need to work with the Indian government on this. And what needs to be done? I think awareness about RSPO and CSPO has to be done in a real big, massive manner, and that's where I think we should focus on. And FICCI definitely is on board on working on these kind of sustainability issues and working with RSPO on this. And we are looking at working with WWF India on organizing a workshop on bringing the major, the Indian and MNC food companies to table and discussing about RSPO. So this is what the presentation is about. I think definitely India is ready for CSPO. It all depends on the strategies that the RSPO adopts in the next couple of years, and how we can convince the Indian government also to come on board and work on this. Thank you very much.